Hey friends. So something came up in my awareness yesterday, I think. It was certainly mentioned in something I was listening to, either a Sadhguru book I've been listening to or this Ken Wilber dialogue that I have also mentioned in a couple posts now. It's really interesting to me how people, thinkers, teachers kind of come online in really interesting ways in my life. It's like they just emerge, deliver something, and move on. And it would be uncanny and miraculous if it weren't just the way it works in this really incredible, miraculous way. So, but what showed up was, and I think this also, it's something that I know this from my own time as a kind of pretty much lifelong seeker. I mean, that's seeking impulse may have been activated at some point. I'm not sure that I could say quite lifelong, but I was certainly available for it. I was certainly predisposed. And what would happen, what I would notice is that as teachers would arise, they would seem to have the answer. And that answer always seemed like it was the final answer. And as adults, you get a little older, you start to realize, well, that's just never gonna happen. There's no final answer in that sense. However, even as adults, there are some ways in which we can project wholeness onto our teachers. And that's essentially a way of outsourcing our own experience of oneness. And presuming or pretending or creating an illusion of someone out there who's got the answer and who therefore is whole. There's a sense that someone out there knows and they've got it all figured out. They've got the whole story. And because I have had I've spent a fair amount of my time in a spiritual process, and what I would call a spiritual practice, a lot of the people I've resonated with have been in that realm of life. Not always, and sometimes they kind of come from a more, personal development, or musical teachers. It's really easy to get. It's really easy when you're someone who really loves learning and loves pursuing disciplines in the company of teachers. It's really easy to kind of outsource that wholeness. And I think I have been kind of aware of this for quite a while now in myself, because I've also had the experience of that causing real problems, both in myself and in situations and relationships that I've observed. And also and especially when those relationships break down, in other words, when our projection of wholeness turns out not to be the case, that can be that can be an awakening. That can be a dicey moment, because we thought, and what it usually means is that there's a break or a falling out that is more that is messier than if that projection had not taken place. Because when we project wholeness onto someone, they now become responsible. We are making them responsible for our own deepest inspiration, our own deepest longing for the universe, longing for spiritual growth. We've kind of we're projecting it onto them. And so when they inevitably fail, we don't like it. We get upset. We feel betrayed. We can feel even attacked if the circumstances are right. We can feel that their failure to take on what we've projected onto them, the perfection of the universe, we can feel like they are like they're not, their refusal to be that is an act of violence, is an act of rejection. And this is something that I've observed it many times, and I have learned to kind of sniff it out, because I'm somebody who's continued to have teachers of many types for all of my life, and that may continue. I do have fewer teachers now than when I was younger, but I don't really expect nor want to be to not be in relationship to teachers. I am also a teacher. I feel like that's my whole life feels like a flow, a dialogue, a flow of information, a flow of growth energy among people who are really excited to learn. And Sadhguru gave a really beautiful definition of spiritual practice or spiritual process in his book when I was listening, I think earlier today. He said, because spiritual practice, spiritual process, it's such a, in some ways, nebulous term. In this day and age, anyway, when we're not talking about religion, or at least I'm not, I'm not talking about a religious devotion or a religious belief system. It's a practice. And what's the way Sadhguru put it was, spiritual process is simply the process of consciously reprogramming our software. Literally, just the process of taking our compulsive behavior, our patterns, and reprogramming them such that they serve us. Such that they serve us on our inevitable, the other thing he said in conjunction with that is, every human being, all conscious beings, have an inherent inclination to experience the divine. In other words, the evolutionary impulse is inherent in consciousness. It's inherent in every sentient being. And human beings in particular, being very conscious sentient beings, have a lot of that impulse. But patterns and compulsions are the things they're sort of like the concretized, aggregated processes and strategies of previous evolution, of prior growth. And almost always they become, when we get to a place where, okay, now I can tell that this is just another form of cyclicality. Now I can tell that this pattern is just another, we're just going around the merry-go-round one more time. Do I want that? Or am I ready to consciously reprogram my software? And, I always like when I kind of touch on descriptions or definitions that really kind of encapsulate and clarify and make simple the definition of a process that is completely vast and completely, ultimately unknowable and almost undefinable, except in this sort of meta way. We're reprogramming our software consciously, by choice, not settling for compulsion. And I think that's the more of this I do, and the more I really give myself over to this, the more I really feel like I'm almost living in a different world. And it is helping me define not so much the work that I do, which is what I was I spoke about this for several weeks ago, when I was kind of going through a crisis of identity, and at some point I sort of felt like, actually, identity, let's take identity out of the equation. Whoa, doesn't that make everything so much easier? It's not so much the work as it is giving me a flavor of the why, the juice, the propulsion for all the work. So finding a nice and concise way of saying what this is about is helpful. That's where I've landed today. Thanks for watching, people. I appreciate you. Much, much love. See you tomorrow.